All right, guys, I am doing a solo today because I was interviewed by Crystal from Crystal Media for her new podcast. And some of the questions she brought up, I was like, God, I feel like I need to talk about them because she's marketing media. And she's like, I just don't know the world of merchandising. And I thought, I might as well bring up some of the questions or talk about some of the questions that she asked me because maybe everyone doesn't know. Maybe it's just like, I don't know, maybe I'm assuming everyone knows some of this stuff. So let's talk all things merchandising. The number one question I get, or the number one challenge I have with um, new people, new clients, or people talking or thinking about hiring a merchandiser is the cost and trying to justify the cost of bringing somebody else in when you've been doing your merchandising the whole time or someone from your store has been doing it. This is a thing. There's a saying, a merchandiser is your best silent salesperson. We make everything look pretty. You guys sell it, but ultimately what we are doing is helping you sell merchandise. And hopefully you are hiring a merchandiser like myself that has worked in lots of stores and understands it's not just about making things look pretty. Because while things do need to look pretty, if they don't sell, it doesn't matter. And my whole job when I work with people and stores is to make sure that I am creating I'm storytelling and I'm creating additional sales by the way I am merchandising. So when you hear me talk about this a lot on my MC Design Collaboration Instagram and stories, is that um, I'm not merchandising just to make it look pretty. I'm merchandising and I'm purposely merchandising items together so that they create add-on sales. So candles, candle holders, candles and matches, tabletop and foods and linens and cookbooks and all of that together in creating stories, not just, it is beautiful when you do just a big cookbook section, but there's something that creates faster add-on sales is when you're doing, say an Italian cookbook and then you're merchandising it next to tomato sauces and you're showing a big pasta bowl and really like creating that add-on sale. So when people ask me, or they're not being able to justify it because they have been doing it themselves, is we literally are reinventing your merchandise. We're looking at it with clear eyes and eyes that, I know what it's like to merchandise the same thing day in, day out. That's why I left Anthropologie. I love Anthropologie, but at a certain point, I wasn't able to look at the product any differently because the Anthropologie, it's a lot of this repeat of the same SKU. They're called velocity items. They're in the line at the store year in, year out. They just reinvent it. And that is the beauty of a merchandiser, is that we are reinventing things. But there is a certain point, whether you're an owner, a merchandiser, you are an employee that's merchandising, you've given the task to your employee, there's a certain point that you hit that you can't reimagine anymore. You literally can't. I talked about it in my solos. That is why I had to walk away from Peking Handicraft, who I love more than anything, but I could not see it anymore with fresh eyes. And as an owner in where you are still merchandising, you've been merchandising it, you have to look at it like, am I looking at this product with fresh eyes still? Am I able to reinvent it time after time after time? Or are you falling back on the way that you're used to merchandising? Are you falling back on, we've always done it this way? Hiring a merchandiser will take that out of your lap. They will look at it with fresh eyes and guaranteed it will create sales. Every single time when I re-merchandise someone's store and every single time we do shifts, and I don't have to do big shifts. I'll get into that in a second as far as timelines of when I think people should, but even just changing out the front platform, even just, switching some things around that you've sold down and we're pulling in some new merchandise and we're like punching up the display statement. We're not changing the whole thing. We're just adding some more things to it, which gives it a fresh look. every single time when I talk to my retailers, they've said, amazing, the sales increased, or this wasn't selling for so long and now it's selling again. And that is what a merchandiser brings to the table. And that is guaranteed is what is going to help you pay for a merchandiser. Okay. Next thing that came up was, how often do you suggest someone coming in and merchandising? Ideally, it doesn't have to be a merchandiser, but ideally you should be, as a retailer, merchandising every week. You know, especially if you do high volume. If you do high volume and you do this beautiful setup, guaranteed your setup is demolished and sold down by the end of the weekend. If you do high volume. I personally like to get into my stores every couple weeks, if not at the minimum once a month. And when I go in once a month, first thing I do, I'll break it down. First thing I do is I'll touch base at the store. How's sales been? What feels like it's not moving? What feels like it's stagnant? Are there areas that just didn't sell? Because, you will have, I can set a floor plan, and I set it based on the philosophies of anthropology, standing back and watching where I want to drive customers and where I want them to go. I will say that there is inevitably, you're going to have a space where it's like, it's just not getting walked. People are walking by it. So I try and touch base with all my clients and find out like, hey, what's working? What's didn't work? Where do we need to look at it and, readjust that section? And then I will go to the store and I will walk the floor, and I would love to redo the whole entire store every time. And that's where it's like, quarterly we'll do that. Like where I just came back from Masane. I go there quarterly. I literally change almost every single section. Most time we'll move furniture, adjust some stuff, but for the most part, every single section changes. I don't do that every time. And if I'm coming to your store once a month, I'll pick and choose what section we're going to do. So Raw Paradise, I'm coming up. We've been there once since we set up for holiday. And this is a long time for me to be gone from my stores. I don't like to be gone this long because they are trying to maintain, they're selling, they're doing volume. And, unfortunately, because of the having to live in Las Vegas, I wasn't able to go. And I have somebody that was able to go in and touch things up. But, everyone's like, no one doesn't like you. And it's like, it could look better than I do it. And I love you, my retailers, but sometimes, it does look better than if I did it, but okay. So I'll go in, I'll walk it. What section that we did last time had the most sell through? What section, it was more shopped down? What section did not do well? Like it just stuff did not sell. Where do we have, holes? And then I will walk the stock room. Your merchandiser should be walking your stock room no matter what. If you have a merchandiser that does not walk your stock room, you need to have a conversation with them, because one, they need to be looking at what are your new receipts, and they also need to be looking at stock on hand. And I know there are several people I've worked with that just hit the store and they start merchandising. They don't look at they'll look at new receipts, but you really need to have your merchandiser look at your stock that you own, that's back stock. Because if I'm not a big fan of double exposing things, I think it's confusing. I think it makes running inventory very difficult because it's in two places, and inevitably someone doesn't look at the second place and thinks something's sold out when in fact it's still on the floor, just in another area. But when you have a lot of inventory, you over ordered something or something's not selling as fast, I will double expose it. And like in January, when I say, when we go into stores and I say, I don't like to have product delivered in January or February, maybe a little bit of a hit in February for Valentine's Day, but for the most part, everyone's getting their credit cards. People are not shopping that much anymore because they have shopped for Christmas and everything's on sale. So I try to go in and I'll look at the back stock levels of what we have, and I'll look at the floor and I'll reinvent what we own. And that means showing some of that product that's been sitting in the back storage area. We'll double expose it and we'll show it in a completely different way. So that is a customer, if you're walking by, you didn't look at it at this one space, but yet you're walking down in another space and all of a sudden it speaks to you. And that's just the psyche of a human shopper. And that's the reason why I always say you want to reinvent what you own, because you'll people that don't see something and you move it from, and I know you all know this. I know you've gone like, oh, we moved it over here. And all of a sudden, like people are like, oh, is this new? And you're there like, yeah, it is. And it's been there in the store for, 6 months, but your merchandiser needs to be walking your stock room. So I'll walk the stock room. I'll look at back stock. I'll look at new receipts. Some stores will put the new receipts out. Some stores will wait for me. Either way, it works either way. Then the next question is, if you are putting your new receipts on your floor, your team is putting your new receipts on the floor, your merchandiser needs to ask you if they don't recognize it. And God knows, seriously, like your merchandiser should be able to walk your floor and see, oh, this is new. But if they don't, you need to walk them through and say, this is a new receipt. This is a really important investment for us. This has come in. This is not selling. We moved, like whatever, like you need to communicate this with your merchandiser. And then I will go and I'll decide, okay, like this is super shop worn. It's a very focal spot. It needs to look tits. Like your front focal entry statement, your opening statement needs to be the strongest statement out of the entire store. So if that opening statement looks stale, if it's sold down, if it's, it's been there for a while, I'll for sure that is top of the list of what we're going to merchandise. And then I will go through the rest of the store and kind of see like what's because what's not looking good anymore. I have a horrible habit of cutting myself off. I'm sure you've heard it in the past, and I just literally caught myself right now doing that. I was about to change directions. This is ADD this is a perfect example of my ADD. But so once I have what I'm doing, then I'll do a set of plan for what we are changing. But again, I really want to make sure you guys, if you are doing it yourselves or you are delegating it to one of your employees, that your employee is walking your back stock and your employees are looking at those elements, your front focal, what is shop down. And then when you're looking at your new receipts, where are you putting it in? Can you reinvent something? For me, that's what I love to do is like, I'll have sections that are not looking so great. So then I'll go back to look at the stock room. It's like, oh, we got this in. I have some of this. I can pull this from another section and reinvent this whole section based on new receipts and pulling a little bit of something. And then the rest is maintaining, like how, like for me at Rock Paradise, and this is one of those things that another question that I was asked is like, how often do you do big shifts? Big shifts 4 times a year, no matter what. I mean, I'm talking like you're moving whole sections, like your whole tabletop section's been here. We're going to move it over here. I used to, when I first started, I used to do, because some of my clients really wanted big, major moves every single time I came. So that meant literally moving whole sections like that. What I've realized later now down the line is that I don't think you need to do that. I don't think I don't think it's beneficial for your business. I think you can make big impacts by merchandising in the same space, just changing the product, because when you're moving stuff around and sections around that much, what happens is you now are creating an Easter egg hunt for your customers. Like you'll customers saying, I was just here a month ago and where did it go? And then the next month they come in, it's like, I'm back again for that Voluspa candle that I always buy. Where did it go? Because we've moved it again. So I will do big shifts 4 times a year. Like that's a non-negotiable. I just think that that's incredibly important. And that this is, I'm going to backtrack. This is based on my lifestyle. I merchandise a certain way. If you are departmental, the way you merchandise is, this is our personal care section, this is our candle section, then I would say you do not need to make these big shifts, because you're then moving around your focal points, which are, sprays throughout the store. So that's how often. And when it comes to windows, I would say, honestly, windows you should be doing once a month. And I know I've talked about this before and I got called out because I did a post on my Instagram about a window, is that your windows are incredibly important. Your windows are literally your calling card. Your windows are the first thing somebody sees driving by or walking by. If they didn't know your store before, your windows, what's going to catch their eye? If they know your store, your customers are looking to see what new products you have. Same thing as your focal opening statement table. That needs to be changed at least once a month. Same reason why is that your customers walking by your store, they weren't planning on shopping. They're walking down the street to the restaurant. They walk by, they look in the door, nothing's changed on the front table and your window hasn't changed. So subliminally, you're telling them that nothing new's come in, even though you may have gotten a ton of new receipts. They're looking in and seeing the same two things that were there the same last month and the month before, and nothing's changed. And to them, and I know for you guys as well, when we do shows, you walk by, you look in a showroom, it looks all the same. We're not going in. And that is one thing I can say is like so worth you doing, is changing your windows. The other part is when it comes to your windows is common sense things. Sweep your window, clear the whole window out, start from a blank slate, Windex your windows. I mean, ideally, you have a window person coming in and cleaning your windows professionally. If you can't, you can't. I understand that. If you have a tool, a squeegee, I highly suggest that, because when you're trying to Windex something and you're just using a paper towel or newspaper or whatever, it leaves streaks and then it's impossible to get out. And the window, inside of the window, 9 times out of 10, no one touches. So sweep, vacuum, do whatever, Windex the inside of your windows. And then start your architecture. Clean your architecture down. Windex, like oil the furniture, whatever it is. Glassware, if you're putting glassware in, Windex the glass. I don't know how many times I can tell you I've gone into people's stores and I've picked up the glassware to do display. And it's like, I don't know. I really don't know what is on the glasses to give it this weird film, but it looks horrible and it has a weird feeling. So clean that off, because even in the windows, incredibly important that they look clean. But honestly, as a customer picking it up and you can see it's dirty, you are again telling your customer that is not important. And if you listen to my interview with Dale from Caton puts a huge emphasis on the folding, the hanging, the type of hanger you use, because how you treat your merchandise is what you're telling your customer of its value. If you treat it like shit and you don't clean it and it's not folded well and it's put on a crappy velvet hanger from Home Goods, I'm sorry, I know a lot of you use them, but they're just not, they're not great. But that's my own opinion. But if you're putting it on a crappy hanger, period, you are basically telling your customer that your product is just not that important. And then it does give the customer an idea of its value. If it is folded beautifully, if it's on a beautiful hanger, if it's Windex and it's clean and it's all that, you're telling the customer that it's important, that it has a value to it. And because nothing makes me more insane than going to stores to shop or to merchandise that no one cleans the store, the shelves, or the product, or cleans the window out, or there's dead flies in it. Like, nothing makes me more insane, because you know as well as I do, and this is where I'm going to get on my soapbox, you know as well as I do, your team has dead time. And I have a couple stores, I'm not going to mention who, but the team has a lot of dead time, and the team would rather merchandise, move things around rather than clean. And it's like, okay, if you're going to merchandise, all right, do you need to? We were just there last week. No. But if you are going to merchandise, make sure you're cleaning at the same time. And they never do it. They literally, most people, and I know this because this was me when I was at Z Gallery or any other stores before I was merchandising. The merchandising is always seen as the quote fun part. And in that fun part, there are still like things you have to do in the fun part, cleaning, Windexing, dusting, everything I just talked about. But by far and large, I run into an issue where the team would rather do the fun, I'm doing air quotes, the fun part, and not do it all the way through, meaning cleaning or whatnot. And if I could give anybody any advice, is go through your store, look at your shelves, run your hand on your shelves, put your hand on the top of the boxes. Are your hands dirty? I worked for, they're no longer open, Wilshire Beauty. I love them. It was a massive, massive space. So I get that. But I will tell you that you're dealing with $100 face creams, like beautiful products that you put on your face that never got dusted. The shelves never got dusted. The product never got dusted. So you'd pick up $100 face cream and your hands were literally black. And I still remember talking to the owner. It was like, Nuriel, why is no one cleaning? Like the whole team is sitting behind the counter. I get it's a huge store, but bite off a piece of the store every day, because when you pick up a product and your fingertips are dirty, you are 100% giving the message to your customers that this has no value. We don't care about it, but yet we're expecting you to pay $100 for it. And I can tell you right now that you go to some of the best stores, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, that they do not have dust on their high-end facial card. And I can tell you right now, most of them have extremely clean shelves. I know it's very hard. And if you're at a high volume store, then I would highly suggest maybe hiring a cleaning team, because again, like if you're doing that much high volume and you don't have time to clean, which is fine, have somebody else do it, because it is really, really, really important. So when it comes to your windows, that's your number one. Take it out, clean it, clean everything down. Number two is if you have mannequins, and I know you all are going to know what I'm talking about, but if you have mannequins and they have heads, and you don't have scarves, and you don't have wigs on them, and you don't have, it's clear. I'm going to back up. It's clear that the mannequin once had a wig, and the wig at some point has been lost, and the tape is still on the mannequin's head from the wig. Please look at that, and please raise the standard and say, does this look off? Does this look good? Does this tell my customers that I care? Or does this tell the customers that we lost the wig and we're too lazy to take the tape off? I know I sound like an asshole saying that, but honestly, like that is like one of the most simple, basic things, because again, like your windows are the first thing your customers see. It's like so important that what they see makes them want to come in. And it's not just because you have product in it, like the whole picture of it needs to look beautiful and clean and tell a story. And I can tell you right now, if you have a mannequin like that and you lost her wig, I get it. Like stuff gets lost or they get beaten to hell, or put a scarf on it. If you don't sell scarves, buy a scarf. Like buy a beanie in the winter if you don't sell beanies. But if you sell hats, if you sell scarves, if you sell like any of that, put it on the mannequin. Please don't leave it bald. And yes, there are some stores that the mannequins are beautiful and sleek and they are supposed to be bald. That's fine. But 9 times out of 10, your mannequins you've had for a while, your mannequins have had hair or haven't had hair. Just please look at it. Broken fingers. Oh my God. Like, here I go. Broken fingers, mannequins with broken fingers. Oh my God. That's truly sends a signal that we don't give a fuck, that, whatever, Madge, the mannequin, doesn't have a finger. Ha ha ha. We think like, okay, I know mannequins are expensive. They're not that expensive. If she has a broken hand, my suggestion is to put a bag, like somehow put something in the mannequin's hand that covers that up. If you have mannequins with hands, and it's missing a hand, take the mannequin off the floor. I know I sound like I'm a soapbox, but I kind of am, because as I'm sitting here thinking about that, I'm thinking about stores that I've walked by and the mannequins are, you could tell they've fallen. They have cracks in their arms. They're missing fingers. They have the tape on their head that had a wig. These are all things your customers see. And if you don't care enough about that, your customer certainly isn't going to, you're just telling your customers you don't care, because you really don't. And I know, like I said, money money is important, and keeping your budgets in line and keeping where you decide you're going to spend your money is important. But I can't stretch enough, or I can't, I'm listening to my dog bark, so I'm a little discount. I can't tell you enough that how important these things are when you're in your window. If the mannequin in the back of the store doesn't have a finger, it's not going to make me as insane, but you're talking about your mannequins in your window. It's on the center stage. So I digress. So that's windows. How often do you do floor sets or have a merchandiser come in? I balance out with some people. I balance it out where I only come there maybe twice a year. I'm kind of going away from that because I really, as a merchandiser and a my goal is always to build my retailers' sales, both by how we are merchandising, both by if I'm helping them buy, by, floor sets. Like, my goal is to make my retailers more money. And you can't really do that if you are not that involved, or if you're only there every 6 months or once a year. It's hard to get invested, and you want a merchandiser. For myself, I am invested in my clients' businesses. It is incredibly important to me when I leave to touch base. How are the sales? What's working? What's not? If you're only there once a year, you're not invested because you're not there, and you're kind of brought in to make things look, quote, pretty, but you haven't seen what's happened between point A and now we're at point Z. Like, you haven't seen what's gone on, and you haven't seen what's worked and what hasn't. And you're just kind of there to make it look pretty, which is fine. But I think, again, by having a merchandiser and having them looped into your business, and you're communicating what's working, what's not, what's selling, what's new, what's reorder, what's dead, what bombed, that is only going to make you more money. And your merchandiser being invested is only going to make you more money because they care like that. Like, if you don't sell stuff, that is not going to do you any good to have a merchandise. And if I don't care about what you've sold and I don't ask you, why are you paying me? Yes, you're paying me to make it look better, but you really, like, I really want to know, I really am here for my retailer's success. And if you're not succeeding and they're not succeeding, I'm not doing my job. So for those of you who are thinking about bringing merchandiser, I would say once a month, every other month, maybe, is the least amount that I would have somebody. In between that, have your team there doing the merchandising, yourself doing the merchandising, but don't make the commitment to invest to at least to have them come once a month or once every other month at the very minimum. It'll make a huge difference in your business, both how you're looking at your own store, what your customers see. But you will have a merchandiser that is invested in you and your business and your success, because that is incredibly important. What was one of the other things I was thinking? So, employees, I would say my goal, I've only stepped away from doing this once, is ideally when I'm merchandising with either the owner, if you're able to, let me step back and say this. I prefer to turn my merchandising into a training moment, to have, if we have somebody there that is your merchandiser, that I'm just starting with you, if it's you, the owner, that you have somebody there that's learning, so I can tell you why I'm doing things. Because everywhere we go, I will have issues of, like, we've never done it like this, or we don't do it like this, or it didn't work like this, or what. Myself and a lot of merchandisers that come out of Anthropologie, we are bringing you to the table tried and true ways of doing things in the merchandising world that are successful and based on the success of a brand like Anthropologie. And if I can pass this on to your team, it's only going to help things, and it's only going to help your team maintain. the store and to understand when new things come in, why we're putting them out like this, why we're stacking them like this, or why we're putting them in a bin, or why I no plastic risers, or, and we'll get back to that in a second. By having somebody there that I can train, it's only going to benefit you. That being said, owner, employee, whatever, you need to be open-minded, and you need to at least try once what the merchandiser is telling you, because there's nothing worse than going into a situation where you're being brought on for your expertise because we've seen things you've done. We heard great things about you, to get into it and to start merchandising, to go, oh, no, hang on. So we sold here at the counter, or we did it. And in my younger merchandising days, when I was not as confident, I would be like, oh, okay, like the people pleaser in me. All right, well, so if you don't want to do that, then we'll do this instead. Now I know the value I bring to the table. I know the years that I've had in this industry. And do I do everything right? No, but by far and large, when you're bringing me on, I'm telling you from years of experience of merchandising, and merchandising with big brands, and merchandising with wholesale showrooms. Like, I'm coming to you with years of experience, and I know my value now. Before, I would, cow tip around like, oh, okay, then they don't want to do this now. And I've said this in the podcast before, I will tell people as soon as I'm starting to get met with like, well, we do it like this, or we've always done it, and no, it doesn't sound like that. And now my response is, and I know some of you who are listening know what I'm going to say is, you're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that means trying things differently than how you've been doing them, because there's a reason you brought me in. And if it was working before, I would not be here. And you have to be open-minded enough and step aside. And I know it's really hard for a lot of you as owners to step aside and let somebody else take control of the wheel. But in that trust of your merchandiser, and that trust, and again, like I will say to people sometimes, where if they're not sure, and they'll be like, okay. And I will say, if it doesn't work, then we will change it. This is not forever. It's not rocket science, but you have to give it a chance, and you have to let it sit, and you have to let it and give it a fair chance of watching how it does with your customers. Not just like 2 days later, I'm getting an email that didn't work, so we moved it back. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but that's not, 2 days is not a good gauge. I'm talking about like, leave it for a week or 2 weeks and see and watch truly with open eyes, not like, I didn't really like it anyway, or I didn't want to do it this way, and I'm waiting to like just take it down. It's like, you've brought me in, you've brought a merchandiser in for a reason. Either something wasn't working, it didn't look to the level that you wanted it at, it wasn't where you thought it was going to be. You've brought someone in. Give them the chance and let them do their magic, and let them have a fair chance at changing your business. And again, the merchandiser you brought in, my hope is that their whole business is rooted in your success. Because if you don't succeed and you don't sell it, then that, obviously for us, we have not done our job. So be open-minded. Let the person do their magic. Let them explain to you. And if you have a question with it, ask. Like, if they're not explaining to you as I do with people, if they're not explaining to you, ask them, why are we doing this? We've always done it like this. But try and think about how you're asking, how you're phrasing it, because the other person who's coming into a new situation is also a little bit on the defense. Like, they're in a new situation. They're used to most times working with stores that are like, just have at it, sister, go for it. So there's a little bit of apprehension on both sides, but try and remember when you're asking about this. But ideally, your merchandiser is explaining to you as they go. They're not, just kind of in their own world. And yes, before everyone says it, I do get in my own world, but that's after I've been merchandising with somebody for years. And it's like, just have at it, go ahead and do it. The only time I've ever told somebody, hey, I'm not going to train anybody anymore is because they had such a high turnover that literally I've trained someone from that store, I want to say 8 times on merchandising. And now I'm finally like, let me save my breath. Let me move through my job. Either you have the manager there with me or the owner, so you are understanding and learning, but to train somebody time and time and time and time and time again, and it's just a constant turn of people, is a massive waste of time for myself, who's taking time out of my day. Because when you're explaining things, it does go a slower process. We will sit and talk about why we're doing something, and it does take longer. So for that situation, now I just go in and merchandise. I'm going to be training their manager now, because also the other part of it is when their team, it's the same store that the team decides they want to re-merchandise everything and not clean. It's like that way that manager can go in now and say, hey, guys, wait, we're not going to this is the reason why we merchandised it like this. This is the reasons. This is the product. This is whatever it is like this. And it becomes a teaching moment versus them changing it or just like, just saying no. Ideally, as a manager, owner, whatever, you understand the philosophies that we're putting in place and we're using and the standards and the who, what, whys. Ideally, then when it comes to your team, like if you're not in your stores very often, or for this case where the team has ample amount of hours on the floor, and instead of cleaning their merchandising, they're able to stop and say, hey, hold up, we're not going to change this right now. I know you want to do it this way, but this is the why. Here's the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Y reasons why we are merchandising this. And then it becomes a teaching moment. And then ideally your staff, when stuff does come in, then you guys can merchandise it together. You're kind of reinforcing that lesson of why we were doing it that. And you are now teaching your team, and ideally you are all putting these procedures and standards and what in place. So that becomes the way of the store. Plastic risers, storytelling. Okay, storytelling. Merchandising is storytelling. I say this all the time. For Anthropologie, they were brilliant. Well, let me back up. To me, there are 2 distinct styles of merchandising for stores, there is a lifestyle merchandising and display, and then there is departmental. And for those of you who shop Stephen Young, this will be a good example. Stephen Young, my responsibilities for merchandising are split with Stephen's wife, Lisa. Lisa is brilliant at the departmental merchandising. She works in a pattern. I can't even tell you how to do it, which is why I don't do that part. She has a way of merchandising where when you look at it, I can clearly see there's a pattern. I can't figure out how she's done it. I have no idea. It seems like the simplest thing, and it's not. It's really not. So that is departmental merchandising. I do lifestyle merchandising, where it is much more of a, as Lisa puts it, loosey-goosey. There is a rhyme and reason to it, but it feels more like you're walking into someone's house, or it's more based on storytelling. So it's Stephen Young's, I do Milk Barn, I do Jellycat, I do Fringe, Rock Paradise, Himalayan. And if you saw the Las Vegas showroom, or if you know the LA showroom, you know that style of merchandising. And then if you go to personal care and the candles, that is more departmental. It's very much more lined up. There's a pattern. So that just gives you a little bit of background on 2 styles of merchandising. When I lifestyle merchandise, that is the style of Anthropologie. That's lifestyle merchandising. I am telling a story with the display that we're doing. And this comes from my time in Anthropologie. And that's what I started to say, is that Anthro is fucking brilliant at lifestyle merchandising. And to the point where the storytelling that they do on these new concepts that we're rolling out, we did big moves, big shifts 4 times a year. We would get a packet that was nothing was digital then. So we'd get a giant FedEx box, and it must be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches thick. Packed in that box was the overall vignette concept. And that concept was the storytelling. That concept was, I've used this example before in the podcast, is Odile was one of the concepts. It was each time we did a change for the 4 times a year, they were, we had the bedding department, which encompassed also wall decor, hardware like knobs and brackets, bedding, blankets, pillows, like hard decor, frames. So that as a concept would change 4 times a year. The tabletop section, all the bowls, the tabletop, the cookbooks, linens, that was a concept. Garden was a concept. So these would change 4 times a year. So Odile was the new concept for the bedding, the hardware, the frames and whatnot. And they had gone, the buyers and the owners had gone to France, to a little tiny village where they found this woman, Mrs. Odile, who they sourced quilts from, beautiful quilts. And she had them over to their house. And in her house, a tiny little French village, this tiny little house, and the layers that they explained that this house had to it was everything from the peeling wallpaper to the pieces of fabrics that she was making quilts that were throughout the house, and the yarns, and her mismatched floral teacups and tabletop ware, and just all the layers that were part of her home. They came back and created a whole concept based around this. So in that concept, in each concept, there were your velocity items, which were the top 10 knobs, the top 10 wall decor, the top 10 bedding, the top 10 pillows, etc. Those were non-negotiables that all had to be within this concept. The other were the display elements. You had to create some type of fixture that was going to house these blankets, that were going to house the pillows, that needed to feel like this. There were, what else was part of this? I'm drawing big, but basically you got this packet. It explained what the non-negotiables were, what the velocity items were, and they had display elements that were a non-negotiable that you had to have. And then they would tell you, then the rest is for your interpretation. That was the beautiful part of anthropology, that they gave you, here's some of your boundaries, but for the most part, go to it, create this amazing space. And that packet and that storytelling and the pictures and the images and everything that they included, so you really got a feeling who lived there, is still what I very much believe in how I storytell merchandising, whether it is a tabletop or a whole section, and how what I'm cross merchandising back to it, and what are the items that are part of this. And when you are lifestyle merchandising, risers are a big part of it. In storytelling with the risers, and my number one non-negotiable is no plastic risers. You've heard me talk about this and get on my soapbox. Plastic risers do their job. I get it. You need something to raise it. But if you're looking at your merchandising and you're creating vignettes and you're creating storytelling, look at it as, what would, I always say, who lives here? What does her house feel like? What is she buying? What else does she need to go with these items? And what does she feel like? Who is she? So I always walk into merchandising situations with that, like, who is she? And when it gets down to what else is she buying, is your cross merchandising and add-on sales moments of, will she need a lighter or matches for her candle? Will she need a candle dish for her candle? Will she need jewelry, little sweet bowls to put jewelry in that you could put the jewelry with? Will she, I mean, whatever it is, you are storytelling, and risers are part of it. So I know I think it was one of the newsletters or the blog posts, but some of the risers that I love, that I swear by, that I use time and time again, wood slices. Easiest thing on earth. They are so accessible and they're free. unless you don't have a tree trimmer, then I would say they're not free. You go down to the flowers market, but they're relatively inexpensive. I get mine at the flower market downtown LA. There's several vendors that do them, especially now that with weddings and them being part of wedding displays, they're all over. But if you have a landscaper, or if you have a gardener and you ask them, hey, if you chop down a tree, will you let me know? And can you slice it up for me? I'll pay you $20 or whatever to do it for me. Best investment ever. They are so beautiful under candles. They are so beautiful to show crystals on. They add an element of organic texture that tells a story, that cuts up everything from being all hard skin. So for candles, I use them a lot because candles are either boxed or they're out of box and they're tins or they're glass, and it's lined up one after another. You need a little bit of softness. You need another texture in there. So I will use wood slices all day for that. Pavers stacked up on top of each other are beautiful risers in this. You can use them in tabletop, you can use them in garden, you can use them in home. They're even like covering a whole table in like them, and to do like say bath products and something like that. Like they're the best. Another one I love is old books. And again, these are things that are not expensive and they're relatively accessible. Garage sale, go to buy a bunch of old books. If all of the hard covers are not the same color, you can tear off the hard covers and just use them stacked up as old book pages. If you are going to a Salvation Army, I look like a total crazy person, and I always get the question like, what are you buying these for? I will go through every single spine and make sure they're all the same color. So all black or all blue, or usually the two standard colors that book hardcovers are in. The other thing you can do is cover them in craft paper, and they're all the same color. I know these details seem like, God, what a pain in the ass. But really, when you think of some of your favorite displays, whether they be Stephen Young or Anthropology or fine, like if you really think about some of your favorite displays and you really kind of look at, if you have pictures and you look at some of these, what are some of the reasons why you love them is because of small details like these. And they are small, yes, but they make a world of difference in your merchandising and your overall display. Binning. I've talked about this before. In the world of retail where there's not zip code protection, and everybody and their brother can buy the lip balm from Poppy that everyone loves, when you take it out of these boxes they come with, and I know for a lot of companies, it's always like, oh, we've got this great displayer, and it has the display, and it has, it's all in there and explains what it is. If you are one of 5 or 6 people on the street that sell this, take it out of the box. I don't allow any of my stores to have these display boxes because that comes from Anthropology. That's just one of those standard things. We weren't allowed to use plastic risers, and we weren't allowed to keep things in the display boxes. What it does is when you put lip balms in a glass jar and you mix them in with like an accessory shop, the way we used to do at Anthro, or in the jewelry shop, and you have these sweet little jars of these little balms, it raises the level and gives the item value. Back to that conversation again of how you treat things. Having things in glass jars instead of the displayers makes them look special. And to be honest, your customer is going to remember the displayer and what it looked like in the display case versus when they see it in the jar and it's like, oh, this is so sweet. I love this lip balm. They will not remember, guaranteed. Very few are going to remember that that's the same lip balm they saw 2 stores down, and yours may be $1 more, but it looks more expensive, and you've given it value by taking it out of that crappy little display player. And so for any manufacturer, I apologize. And I will say this, if you have beautiful displayers, keep them. If they feel special, they feel boutique, but if it's like a crappy displayer, and you honestly, if you are one of 5 stores on the block that sell this lip balm or whatever item, take it out of the box. Like, honestly, like it is. And yes, glass jars are going to be an investment, but you can find them at Home Goods. You can find them at the Container Store. I buy ours at the Floral Supply Syndicate, downtown LA. Floral Supply, any floral supply place, wholesale floral, will have different kind of jars. The next big thing for binning when it comes to jars is do not put a lid on it. Two things: jewelry cases with doors and jars with lids, people will not shop. Jewelry cases with doors, you need for high-end jewelry. If you are putting jewelry behind a glass door, that even if it doesn't have a lock, but there's a door on it, if it's inexpensive jewelry, take the door off the jewelry case, because 9 times out of 10, people won't open that. People will open it. The people that do are the ones that steal. If you have a door, most people, for whatever reason, much like the jar, people won't take the lid off. I don't know what it is. It's another one of those customer psyche things, but jars with lids, if you think about it, if you have stuff with jars and lids, like think about how often people go and take the lid. Like most people don't. I don't know I have no idea why. Jewelry, inexpensive jewelry under glass behind a closed door is not going to sell as fast as if you have it out or you don't have a door on it. Other binning things I love: inexpensive baskets for Peking Handicraft. The last setup we did at Sales Producers, they had a lot of miscellaneous, because what jars do, I'll back up. What jars do is contain lots of little things. It also helps you break up your merchandising when it comes to, say, one big wall unit. So you're not looking at row after row after row of stacked things or whatever, but it's not row after row like a CVS. Having a jar, something jarred in there, broken up, helps give it a pattern that it's not CVS and it's not just lined up. So I will bin little books like I forget I think it's Chronicle, but the tiny little crystal books that are literally this big. I'm showing my fingers if those of you aren't watching. Those I'll put in jars, because stacking them up, they're so small, it's like this weird little stack up. So it's like, it's just so easy to throw them in a jar, or in a basket. I will do lip balms. I will do basically anything small candles, the Voluspa candles with tins, like anything in glass, crystals. We've been on crystals, even glass jar things. I've rarely had glass jars break when we put glass in them. Same thing as I've rarely had glass candles break inside a jar or a basket with other glass candles. So don't let that, test it out unless you have extremely aggressive customers. Like I've really rarely had, and this goes back to time and anthropology, I've really rarely had glass product or glass jars break because of customers mishandling them. Baskets. So Peking, they had tons of teeny little, they were like the newest intro that came out a couple years ago. And they were like basically the size of an envelope, all these little pillows. And, you know, when you're dealing with little teeny tiny pillows and you're putting them on deep shelves, they look super small and super unimportant. So I will mix them. So we took one of the wall units, the shelving units, and it was big pillows on the top and bottom. And I chose to take the very middle shelving unit. I shortened the space between the shelves, and I just lined up plastic $6 baskets from Target that were low and lined them up on the whole shelf. And that's how I mix and match the little pillows. We just binned them all together, because your customer, the other thing I hear a lot back, it's like, oh, like no one's going to go through them. Your customers are going to go through. That's part of the hunt of shopping, and they will go through and peel through, just like when you have jewelry, carded jewelry in jars, you'll see them going through the jar. And that's when you're mixing different styles and different products. But you know, it had a way of containing all these tiny little pillows that didn't end up everywhere. They were all contained. It was easy for customers to shop. So that's another example for binning. I like to use wood boxes, wood crates. But you get the idea. Just ideally, it's to break up your shelving, it's to help your merchandising, it's to bin miscellaneous products, and it's to break up your merchandising on a shelf so you don't look like CVS. What else? I don't know, but I wanted to come on today, talk a little bit about the merchandising and a little of the background, because like I said, when I talked to Crystal from her new podcast and she had these questions, it was so funny to me because I thought, gosh, doesn't everyone know this? And she even said most people may know this, but herself coming out of marketing, she didn't know. So it was so much fun to answer them. And then it made me start thinking about like, oh, well, let's talk about some of this on the podcast with you guys. So if you have any questions, please send them my way. I'm going to do another one of these and we'll go into a little bit more of merchandising terminology, merchandising, my philosophy, how to do it. So I really look forward to you guys giving me feedback on what worked and what didn't. If you have questions, please send them my way. I always have time. I will always answer DMs. I will always answer. So if you are already not following MC Design Collaboration, please go over. Follow me. I'm very vocal in stories. I will walk through displays when I'm doing them, talk about the who, what, why, because I'm all about teaching people why you need a merchandiser. You can do it too. Here's why. So I'm all about trying to like give that more information is more information. The more, the better, the more, the merrier. So if you have questions, let me know, send them my way, either via email or you can email me at mcdesigncollaboration@gmail.com. You can DM me both here at the Retail Horror Podcast, or you can DM me at MC Design Collaboration. But send me any questions, let me know. I'm sure some of you are going to have some disagreements, which I totally wholeheartedly hope that you bring my way so I can talk to you more about it. But hopefully this episode helped you. Hopefully it gave you a little bit more insight on what we merchandisers do and the thought process and my thought process personally, but for other merchandisers that are out there, hopefully all of this helped. And if you like this episode or any of our episodes, please go and send us a review. Please share and recommend us to your friends. It helps us so much move through the ranks. I cannot thank you enough. And that is it for me, guys. Have a good afternoon. I'll talk to you soon.